leading up to the 2024 City Film Festival. And without giving too much away, the two of us are here to talk about some of the incredible films in our lineup this year. So first, so you guys all know who we are, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Iris, and I am on the media team for the festival this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Sonia, and I'm part of the editorial team this year. And we're both university students. We were lucky enough to get internships to the festival this year. And we have been working behind the scenes, creating exciting programs for all of you, so thank you for tuning into this.
And this year we have over 75 films in total to screen from the very comforts of your own home, because we're entirely online this year. And all of them really go to show the variety and talent that we have in the film industry here, specifically in southwestern Ontario.
Yeah, for sure. There's just so many different films this year. And one thing that we noticed is a lot of these films deal with different aspects of lives, you know, the ups and downs, but also take a second to celebrate important moments in our lives. And what's great about these films that we're talking about today is that they deal with different things about the human life that maybe you wouldn't think of in your daily life. So for example, just the coming of age process and how that deals also with different cultural experiences, how the two are connected together, and how that everyone can have different experiences. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for example, there's a film we have called Holly's Dress, which is premiering October 21st. It's a short doc directed by Annie Sakab, and it gives us a rare insight into the Mennonite community. The story is a little more formal in tone, but it tells the story of a young girl named Holly and her transition being accepted by the community as she grows up and becomes a young woman. Whereas we have a film called Signal Fire, which is a short narrative directed by Londoner Alice Shin. And this gives us an insight into what it's like growing up in a Chinese immigrant family. And this was shot, I think, in Markham. And again, both films highlight very different cultural experiences, but they have very similar themes of family relationships, acceptance by your community, and the importance of honoring tradition.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I was watching those films, both of them gave me insights into other people's cultural experiences that I just maybe don't experience on my day-to-day life. Like, for example, I didn't know that in Mennonite culture, the final year before a girl becomes a woman into the community, that she spends a year with her mother, learning how to make her own dress, learning how to do things around the house, and just being the next kind of homekeeper. And I thought that was really beautiful because it really does focus on the bond that she creates with her mother through these kind of passed down generational things. And then whereas in Signal Fire too, the disconnect between the father and the son when the film first starts, it kind of touches on like the generational disconnect, but that they still found a way to communicate and to create a bond with each other despite that language barrier that they have.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And I think what's also great in both of these films, they really go into both sides of the story. In Holly's Dress, you get to hear as much from the mother as you can hear from Holly herself. And in Signal Fire, you get all these different parts of the film that relate more to the father than the son, and then you get to know the experience even though you're not actually experiencing it.
Yeah, for sure. We can't all say that we understand what it's like to grow up in a Chinese household, but there's still elements of that story that you can bring into your own life and that you can relate to for sure. So another thing as well is a lot of these films are dealing with the feminine perspective, feminine experiences, what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to grow up, and just all those kinds of different experiences. So, for example, we have one called Breaking Up for the Modern Girl, and it is directed by Sydney Haroff. The editor was also from London, and it's a little quirky and it's a little kind of fun. It's just about a girl who has a breakup, and basically goes through 10 different stages of acceptance, of grievance, just trying to find out who she is and where to go now that this relationship is over.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, to add on to that, in a lot of these films not only explore like that the positive and comedic experiences for women, but it also explores the somewhat negative and hard to talk about topics that have to be brought into discussion. And through that, they do that through film. Like we have a film called The Male Gaze by Annie Sakab again, which is coming October 24th. Which is about the situation where women often find themselves being objectified by men, by strange men. And it's a really powerful short film that really goes to show a lot without even going into the details, just the feel of the film is really, really powerful. And we have another film by Danielle Butters called All in Madonna, which is also about a young girl trying to find her way in high school this time, trying to find her spot amongst her peers and trying to fit in, and how hard that is for her to kind of fit in because she comes from a very different background and very different experience than the most people in her school.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking on just both of those films that you mentioned there, both of them, what I really liked about it is that they are portraying the emotions of their characters in such subtle ways. Like, for example, with the male gaze, most of that script actually is non-dialogue. It's all through actions. It's all through the inner dialogue of those characters, what they're feeling in those moments. Because when when you're in that situation, when you feel uncomfortable, is someone staring at me? Am I being objectified in that sense? You don't have outward conversations with yourself. You're just having internal monologues and your feelings, and sometimes you can have self-doubt about that. And so it's just really interesting to see those kinds of internalized experiences represented so creatively on the screen, for sure. And what's great too is that we're not only looking at female-centric films, but we're also looking at films with minority stories. And I mean, it's so important to have those kinds of stories being represented. So.
Yeah, I mean, Holly's Dress, it's a very different take on something. It's female centric, which is wonderful. But it's also about something that not many people in everyday society, like in the city around here, it's not something that many people notice or know about. And that goes to show, like you mentioned, the minority stories, like Little Red and Signal Fire, about immigrant stories and what that's like for them. As well as we have The Cuban, which is coming, one of our feature films, which stars Academy Award winner Louis Gossett Jr., who was also, I think, just nominated for an Emmy a couple of weeks ago, which is really cool, which is about an elderly man who's from Cuba and who develops a relationship with his caretaker, who wants to bring back his memories because he's suffering from dementia, and it's a very, very wonderful story about his life and about that development between the two of them, as well as From the Vine by Sean Cisterna, which is also touches on Italian culture, where the main character goes back to his childhood home of Italy. And it's a very beautiful, very romantic film focused on the Italian countryside, and it also touches on those cultural aspects, the Italian and what it's like for him. One of my favorite moments from The Cuban is definitely when we get to see flashbacks of his childhood, where we see what it was like in Cuba, and I found the design and colors really inviting compared to the initial atmosphere of the nursing home and of the everyday life he's living with dementia, which I thought was really cool. What about you? Did you have any favorite moments out of any of these?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, The Cuban overall, such a beautiful film, and to me, it was such a celebration of Cuban culture. I loved the fact that we got to hear them speak, Spanish, and there wasn't subtitles, and it was just naturally integrated into the film. I really enjoyed, you're right, the contrast between the kind of the drab nursing home settings versus his vibrant memory and stuff like that. And it really just speaks to the idea that, like, there's so much in a person's like history and life that we don't really know about, and that we should take the time to sit down and like listen to these cultural stories and these heritages and understand just the generational divide, like the stories and stuff. Like, I thought it was so beautiful that, she's a young practicing nurse, and that, she took the time to sit down and really understand this man's life instead of just, kind of writing him off and saying he's just another one of my patients, for sure. I also wanted to just point out as well, we also have another movie. It's called The Last Out. It is a documentary, and it's directed by Michael Gasser and Sammy Khan. It's also touching about the Cuban culture, but it's about 3 young Cuban baseball players who leave their home and their family, and they try to make it here in America to play for the big leagues. Honestly, it is such an interesting film because it deals not only with the idea of leaving your home and your everything you've known to come to a new country to pursue your dreams, but also just the process of immigration and becoming a legal citizen too. So that one I found was a very interesting kind of thing on cultural experiences.
Yeah, that got me thinking about Little Red, which we were talking about earlier, about that immigrant situation. And you mentioned the Spanish and the Cuban, without not really focused on the subtitles, what it means, but the feeling behind it and the intention behind these characters. And in Little Red, this really goes to show, especially with the technical stuff in that film, where it seems like it's all one shot, and there's no direct scenery that you're watching, but it's so beautifully done, and that really goes. It gets you thinking about how these films are made, how much effort is put into them to make them look so smooth, and make them look so enjoyable to watch. And especially the fact that all of these films have Southwestern Ontario connections. And a lot of them were made by graduates from various film programs like Western or Fanshawe or even Sheridan. Like we have Danielle Butters, who has 2 films, and both of them were entirely focused from here in this area in London, in the London area, which I think is fantastic. And again, it goes to show like how much film and how much creative talent we have in all aspects of cast and crew that we have in this area alone.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to speak really quickly on what you said about Little Red. I definitely liked the fact that it was shot in one location, just one house, and that it moves through the house and you hear, the dialogue between the family. But it was so clever to me that they don't specify that relationship, the growth of that family. It really sets it to be any family. So you can take what's being said in that film and you can apply it to your own life, and you can still relate to those characters, and it just shows that like underneath it all, at the heart of it all, family relationships are not that different from one another, right? We all have kind of very similar experiences, even though they may be shaped differently by our cultural, influences. So, yeah. And just going off of what you said too about the Southwestern connections too. Yeah, I had a chance to speak with Danielle Butters, and she was saying that for her movie, The Male Gaze, that the London Transit actually allowed her to film on their bus. And she said it was such a community effort because they were just like nothing but nice and they just were supportive. So it's really great to see the opportunities for filmmaking here in our city, but also just Southwestern Ontario in general. So,
yeah. We're really fortunate that we also get to do this festival like this entirely online, because it's very tricky with the pandemic going on, but we still wanted to get these films out there and promote these filmmakers from the area, because it's so worth it, and these films are so incredible. They're not just like big blockbuster films that everybody watches at the theater. These are really, really beautifully crafted. And so to add on to that, make sure that you check out the website, Forest City Film Festival, or FCFF.ca, Forest City Film Festival, and our socials, like right now, for more information on tickets. And there is still an early bird discount going on until October 10th, where you get a chance to get between 20% to 45% off of your tickets, whether you buy a package or one pass. So definitely make sure that everybody checks that out.
Yeah, for sure. So the festival starts October 17th. We've got a lot going on that day as well. We've got our very first industry session with Samara Smallwood. So please take a look at some of those other industry sessions that we have. Again, all of this information can be found on forestcityfilmfestival.com or FCFF.ca. And we're going to be here every week. So please make sure to tune in, hear some more about the films, get to chat with us if you have any questions as well. So thank you all for coming, and we hope you've enjoyed this session.